have Pullman Halloween, in which you can sit at a table we'll have outside the church and be giving out candy, saying hi to kids, seeing all the cute costumes. You're welcome to come hang out with us for that time. If you're interested in that, you should talk to Emily, who's not here right now. So you can send Emily a DM on Slack or tell me and I'll tell Emily. Also, Caleb, ding, 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 ding. Gold star, thank you for donating candy. Anybody else who has any candy lying around, please. I heard that was you. I'm sorry if it wasn't. That would be like, oh no. No, feel free to give to that. On the 31st, I don't know if a time has been picked, and all my admin people are dropping off kids. On the 31st, at a particular time, there'll be a chili cook-off, hang out in the room where we have kids ministry back here. We'll bring some chili, share, hang out. If you don't bring a chili, that's also fine. Just come eat it, especially looking at you students who don't probably have lots of time for kitchens and all of those things. Still come out, still eat, still hang out. That's the 31st. On the 2nd of November, we have a murder mystery party. It's 1920s themed. We had an Old West themed one last year. It was a huge hit. It was a great time. If you're interested in leaning into the drama, you want to be murdered, you want to do a murder, you want to be somebody who seems like they could have murdered somebody but didn't, you should talk to Miss Nicole. That's not her. You can just call her Nicole. I'm used to calling her that for my children. You can talk to Nicole Clements or Kristen Grayson about that. They love to write you into the story. So again, feel free to get on the Slack to find those people if they are not here, which they're not at the moment. Those are our event announcements of what's going on. Oh, and today at 1 at the 1912 Center, Luke and George are presenting to a whole bunch of the churches in Moscow and our larger area on religious trauma, spiritual trauma, how church abuse and spiritual abuse has affected young people and their willingness to show up at church spaces and their overall well-being, because we care about the second thing more than the first thing there. So they'll be presenting to a whole bunch of churches. You can come support them if you want, heckle from the crowd. That's my plan. Boo, everything's fine at church. What are you talking about? And there'll be desserts, so that's fun. If you want some free dessert in the 1912 Center, come to that. That's at 1 p.m. today. Or if you're interested in being part of a spiritual trauma recovery group, you can also learn about it there. Okay, those are my announcements. We also have benevolence. If you did not know, I apologize, but if you ever find yourself on the down and out, you get a car payment that surprises you, you gotta pull some extra resources, not sure if you can make it, any unexpected bills, anything like that. Our church has a special fund set aside to help people, bless people, serve people in our community. And so there is a form, I think, that Ferris can put on the Slack. Lots of things happening on the Slack today. But you can know that that's there. If you weren't aware, you've been having a hard time, we can help you. We'd love to help you. That's why that money is there. It just sits there. If nobody needs it, nobody uses it. So please tell us. We'd be excited to help you out. And there's that form, so you don't even have to feel weird talking to somebody about your problems, because who likes that? Nobody. Okay, we are finishing up today a series on the autumnal biblical holidays. What's that? In the broader church tradition, we have our regular church calendar, right? We have Christmas and Easter, depending on how high church you get or how traditional you get. You'll also have things like Lent. You might have Pentecost Sunday. You might have all these different things. If the Catholics and the Orthodox win the trophy for having the most feast days, they know how to party, I guess. But there's also this biblical calendar that God describes in Torah in the first 5 books in the Old Testament about how he wants his people to celebrate. So we don't say that the church calendar is bad or something, but we like to return to the biblical holidays and see what lies in there for us as well, because that's God's design. And we've been following these series of stories. So all the way back in spring, we have Passover, which is about deliverance. It's about rescue. It's about being brought out from under the boot of oppression, right? And then we have Yom Teruah, which is the day of trumpeting. And that's about how everyone, exactly as they are right now, is invited into the presence of God, the goodness of God. There's nothing we need to change about ourselves to be invited to be with God. Then we have Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, right? We did that one last week. It's the one day of the year where you talk about your sin and get serious about your sin and the way that brokenness internally affects us internally, but also affects our relationships with one another, with our broader community, with the world, with creation, right? And so that's Yom Kippur. This day is a different day. It's kind of an epilogue. It's an after day, which we might not experience all the time in the church, right? If you align those previous three holidays that we just talked about with the Christian experience, right? You might have a dramatic, amazing moment of coming to Jesus, experiencing that deliverance from the things that were keeping you down, binding you, etc. Though that's Passover, right? Coming into the presence of God, that can be for the first time, that can be part of the Christian experience. So of course you can cultivate that every day. Experiencing atonement. And then after those things are done, there can be this drop off of like, okay, I got baptized, I did the things, I had this amazing moment with God. Today's holy day addresses the what now. Like, I got baptized, it was magical, it was amazing, and now I go back to my normal life. What is this about? What am I supposed to grab hold of? What do I hold on to through this time? So we can look at that as a community, but also individually. The holy day today is called Sukkot. Say Sukkot. Perfect. Sukkot means huts or booths, not tents. We'll talk about that later. So huts or booths. So this is called the Festival of the Booths. If you're used to seeing that from Jesus' story when he celebrated it, or in any other translation, it might show up being called Festival of Booths. But they're huts. So that's odd. That's interesting. Why would there be a holiday called Hut Day, right? That's maybe not what we expect to encounter. Why is that meaningful? Why is that interesting? Well, let's look at Leviticus 23, verses 39 through 43. So if you're in the Slack, there is a scripture in there that you can read along with. If you brought your own Bible, that's Leviticus 23, 39 through 43, or you can just sit and listen. Any of those options are great. But I will read. On the 15th day of the 7th month, for 7 days, when you gather in the produce of the land, celebrate the festival of Yahweh. Completely rest on the 1st day and the 8th day. Take to yourself on the 1st day the fruit of a beautiful tree, palm fronds, boughs of a leafy tree, and of the braided trees of the brook, and rejoice in the presence of Yahweh your God for 7 days. Celebrate the festival to God every year. This is an engraved commandment for eternity in every era. Celebrate it in the 7th month. Dwell in huts for 7 days. All of those born in Israel must live in huts so that all might experientially know in all your eras that the children of Israel dwelt in huts when I brought them from the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh, your God. So what do we have? Kind of dense, everybody loves Leviticus. That's everyone's go-to life verse is in Leviticus. What do we have here? If your mind kind of went blank and played static while I was reading that, you're probably not alone. So what do we have here? We have rest. It's one of the first things that God says, completely rest after you're done with harvest. God continually cares about rest. It's something he's passionate about for his people. He's not just like on board with the self-care train in our cultural zeitgeist. God is the one who invented rest. He invented us to need rest. That rhythm of rest and celebration is part of God's design. Second thing we can notice out of there, we've got nature imagery. Intriguing and detailed, right? Beautiful tree, palm frond, boughs of leafy trees, braided trees. So we've got a variety of different elements of nature. Interesting. We've got rejoicing. That's an engraved commandment for all of our eras. God commands us to protect not just times for rest, because our productivity mindset can be like, yes, I must rest so that I'll be better at my job. We're also commanded to pursue joy, to protect times and spaces for joy. And what specific kind of joy? It says, rejoice in the presence of Yahweh for 7 whole days. What might have that look like? Well, the word festival is the word chag. Say chag. Amazing, kind of like a hog, but with a phlegm at the front. A chag kind of means circle, and it has a bunch of meanings that come out of that, kind of the circle of the year. But another meaning is it's a circle dance. So except for, white American culture, we don't really like dance unless it's a wedding, and then we get awkward and strange. Across the rest of the globe, including Europe, by the way, circle dances are normal community way of partying, right? There's all these different ones from all over the planet, from the Maasai to Estonians, you can find circle dances. So that is an embodied whole party, right? Sometimes in church context, when we hear rejoice, we think, very dignified, sitting there with our thermoses. Yes, I'm rejoicing in the Lord, and it is my strength. That's not what it looked like. It was 7 whole days of a real party with dancing, with music, therefore. It's a good time. And God is there, right, in the presence of Yahweh. And finally, in this Leviticus portion, we have a reference to remembering the story that we've been tracking, the story of God's people in the desert. The text says, so that all might experientially know in all your eras that the children of Israel dwelt in huts. So if we remember the story, we escaped from Egypt, yay, all the Nazgul, Egyptians got crushed in the waves. And then we had, then we got to the mountain. That's where we had Yom Kippur. We got to be invited to go up to the mountain top, and the people said, no, just send Moses, right? So in the story, this is after that big, incredible, crazy moment. There's lightning, there's thunder, there's earthquake, all these things happen, and then they go out into the desert. Why is it important to God that they remember specifically while they were in the desert for a very long time, decades, that they lived in huts? What's interesting about that? What's important? That hasn't answered our question. Why Sukkot? Why Festival of Booths? Why Festival of Huts? Why huts, though, says my notes. A couple of reasons. We'll talk about them. Number 1, these huts, God commanding them to build them year after year, is to remind them of, number 1, their connection with nature, their interconnectivity with nature, their closeness with nature, right? They're building a hut. It's not just like a nice little tent from REI. It is stitched together, woven out of branches and leaves and sticks that they found around, right? So it's so easy for us, especially in our time, to forget our interdependence with creation, our interdependence with our environment. We kind of live in our cars, and then our houses, and then our cars, and then work, cars. And it's so easy for us to divorce our daily life from nature and think like, oh, it'll be fine. It doesn't matter how I live my life or the kind of choices I make around the environment. It's doing its thing and I'm doing my thing. Of course, that's not true. The way we live our lives and the choices we make and the policies that we enact radically changes what it's like outside. And so this commandment from God during autumn, by the way, is interesting. They have to be outside for 7 whole days. They have to feel that creation is our apartment. It's our womb. It's the place that God has set up for us. How are we doing? How is it doing? Are we taking care of it? And then also, can we rejoice in it? Can we experience it in this meaningful, kind of magical way, right? 7 days camping with all of your friends. Sounds like a good time. We should take this one up, you guys. Okay, we do. We go camping every summer, but it's not autumnal. Okay, number 2, why huts? Why Sukkot? They build these huts to experientially remind them that their community identity is not in their possessions. It's not in having stuff. How does that come about? Well, this is not how it is at our camping trip, but you can imagine in a really toxic community that it would be like, oh, this person has a 5-wheeler and this person is sleeping in their car and this person has a camper van, but that person sleeping on the ground. There's none of that comparison possible. If you're all going out in the wilderness, you're all just walking, and then you're stitching things together from branches, right? There's no ability to posture about who has more and who has more social status and prestige and honor if you leave all of those things behind, and it's just you and nature, right? Just very Eden-like experience of one another, Eden-like experience of who we are in our community and our possessions. So number one is interconnectivity with nature. Second is community identity not being on stuff or wealth. Number three, they're building these booths for community building. So community identity versus community building. Community building, if you look at different translations of this Leviticus portion, they give like different names of the different species of tree. So it could have been that way, or it could have been like, we just have to find a pretty tree, you guys. It's a giant scavenger hunt that's cross country, right? You have to find a myrtle tree. Who's got the best myrtle tree spots? What if you just moved to town? I don't know where the myrtle trees are. Please, somebody tell me the myrtle trees. It's commanded by God. I'll be in trouble if I don't do this. We're all doing it together. So you go and you find, hey, where's the myrtle tree spot, you guys? And you all go on a 2-day hike to go to the myrtle tree spot because there's not that many of them, right? And there's these 4 or 5 different species of plant that you have to go hunt down, harvest a whole bunch, bring them back, build them together, right? That's how we build relationship, is in projects, doing things together, working on projects together. And doing it outdoors, doing it in a gesture of care for one another, like, oh, let me go get that palm frond for you. It's really high. I want you to make sure you have your palm fronds. This still happens in a modern celebration of the Festival of Booths. I put some pictures in the Slack if you're curious about what that looks like. They've gotten away a little bit from all plants and vegetation to using more curtains and stuff like that, and then just putting vegetation on the top, but still counts. It's still fun. And they are going to be in these huts, right? How community building is that all of your partying, all of your meals, all of your sleeping, it's all taking place in these huts together, right? You're hanging out even just for 7 days on its own without anything else. That would be community building. But number 4 about why huts is gratitude. Might not stand out to us immediately, but they escaped from slavery. They're in the wilderness, and there God provided shade, right? Because they have to know where these trees are. In the very beginning of this holiday, they're sent out. They don't even know where the myrtle tree spot is. They've got to find it together. And so gratitude underlines this. Why is it important that they lived in huts and sukkot? We imagine them all the time as being in tents, right? We have jokes about Israelites in the desert being in tents. They didn't have tents yet because they didn't have REI. They didn't have Walmart, wherever floats your boat, because it is labor intensive to produce fabric, right? Even if we don't picture them like in a giant Harry Potter style magical tent situation, we can still picture like there's a branch and then it makes like the little A-frame. Fabric is extraordinarily difficult to create and takes a lot of time. You've got to sit there and weave. You've got to make all of the fabric from the animals that they've run off with. That is going to take an extraordinarily long period of time. And if you're wondering what these tents look like, again, it's not the little A-frame. Put it at the bottom of the Slack because I just thought of it on the way here. Oh, that would be a helpful visual. They're these enormous structures that are still portable. You can take them down and put them back up, but there's rugs all over the sand. You've got these huge shapes made out of usually camel hair, sometimes other kinds of hair that reflect the sun really well. To try to keep it cool inside these big tents. That is a huge undertaking to make those. And so they didn't even have those because they're running out of Egypt. They grab some of their neighbors' stuff right on the way out. That's gifted to them, a special provision from God. But they don't necessarily have all of the fabric to make these tents. And so they're extra reliant upon God in the middle of the desert to show them where are the branches, where are the plants that we can make shade and shelter from. And so gratitude, seeing God's provision, calling it out and saying, I know that God is good and he still loves us even though we're out here in the middle of nowhere because look at those trees over there. Those will be great. We can make our shelters with those. So gratitude is a tool that they had in their pocket in this experience throughout the desert. That's a time of scarcity, right? It doesn't feel like abundance. They're building toward building a just society in the promised land, right? They're talking about the laws. How are they going to live well and live right in this new space? They're not there yet. And that can echo some of our experiences. We have an idea of what kind of society we'd like to live in, and we're trying to put the world back together, and we want to experience justice and equity for all people, right? Compassion, all of these things sound great, but in the meantime, it can feel like scarcity. What is one of the ways that we can navigate that scarcity together? But gratitude. Calling out, you know what, I would really like a tent right now, but we don't have a tent. But you know what we do have? A tree. And that's cool too. So they're called each year to remember this, that God still provided for them. They're still held by nature, God's creation and growth. So it's a holiday for gratitude before Thanksgiving even existed. We can find inspiration in their faithfulness of having this time, gathering together as a community building, thinking about community identity, thinking about how we're supported by nature and we're so intertwined with nature, but then also seeking out gratitude as a setting on our compass, right? Where's our North Star? How do we stay okay in such a time as this? Gratitude is one of those things. Some final thoughts on gratitude that just might catch us because we hear the word gratitude. It's pretty prevalent in the zeitgeist. We know from science and culture that it's something that can really buoy your brain and make you more resilient. So here are some thoughts on gratitude. Habakkuk 3, we have to have a biblical quote in here, says it this way: though the fig tree may not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, though the making of the olive oil may fail, and the fields not yield food, yet I would practice exuberant joy and dance for joy in Yahweh, the God of my rescue. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, so I think he has some things to say about resilience in times of scarcity. He says, the last of human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Helen Keller also, knows some things. She says, not much has been given to me. I have no time to ponder over that which has been denied. Brene Brown, finally, patron saint of Refuge, just kidding, says, I don't have to chase extraordinary moments to find happiness. It's right in front of me if I'm paying attention and practicing gratitude. So we're going to do something that might seem very easy and comfortable for some of us, and it might feel pretty uncomfortable for others of us, but we're going to take 1 minute to be silent and think about things that we have gratitude for. I'm going to set a timer because I don't like the silence of just sitting there. I'm one of the people who's uncomfortable, but 1 minute tells us like this won't be for that long, but also we have to make it the whole way without me going, okay, that's good enough. So 1 minute, we're going to spend pursuing gratitude, pursuing where are the things. My life could be really difficult right now. What are the things I have to be grateful for? So we'll do that. Then I'll pray. Then the three of us are going to play a song about gratitude, and then we'll break up into discussion groups if you choose to say. So I will pray first, and then we'll do that minute of silence. God, I thank you that you instituted days, you instituted a rhythm for your people about ways that you showed up in their story. You show up as rescuer. You show up as our atonement. You show up as a person gathering us up to the feasting table to be with you and to celebrate. I thank you for that. But you also set aside a particular time for us to remember that even when the world might feel completely on fire and everything is burning down, literally or spiritually, that there are still little palm trees dotted along our way. There are still little things that we can spot and remember that you are above all things, you are the sovereign of the universe, and you are good, and you still give us things to celebrate. And one of those is togetherness. So I pray also that in this time we would find that gift of gratitude through celebrating one another in this little community that we have built. I pray that you would be with us during this 1 minute, that you would cause good, life-giving, meaningful things to arise in our minds and hearts. Help us to celebrate the ways that you have provided for us. In your name, Jesus, amen.